Hello, everyone. This is Roman Bagamazov, and this is our session number 9 on the Wyckoff Trading Institute channel for the Chinese traders. And as usual, together with me for this session is Joe Garvin, and he is going to be translating today.
大家好，今天是2018年5月11日，这是我们魏科夫交易研究所的第9次视频，然后这里是罗蒙·博格马佐夫教授。
Today we will be talking about institutional behavior, which we could see in the volume and price action. And specifically, we will go through the case study of the Sea Snail Concrete Company, which I thought was a really good historical study for us to understand the nuances of the Chinese institutional behavior.
今天我们将探讨如何在量价关系上发现机构操作的踪迹。我们大家都知道，机构是股票上涨和下降的最主要动力。然后呢，我们用一个实例，也是海螺水泥这只股票来进行分析。
And before we do that, some of the administrative notes. First of all, thank you so much for all of the emails that are coming our way. And for some of you who know this, we did miss this session last week, so we apologize for that. I was just extremely busy with the new cycle and registrations associated with that cycle. So, and from time to time, we will miss, a week here and there. But what's important is that as we post the video, as Mike posts the video on Youku, you should be receiving a notice if you are a subscriber to our channel that the new video has been posted. So hopefully that just is a more efficient way for you to know that the video is posted. And in the future, we're working on the blog page, which will have all of the videos, the links to those, and the slides as well.
首先呢，感谢大家给我们发了很多邮件，给我们留言，非常感谢大家。而且大家也知道，上一周我们没有发视频，我只是因为罗蒙老师太忙了，他正在准备新学期的开课，所以说工作量特别大。我们呢以后呢希望我们每一次发一个新的 video 的时候，大家如果你是subscribe 这个 video channel 的话，或者就是咱们叫订阅。如果你有订阅的话，那么优酷将自动给你发信息。所以说我们可能尽量减少大家一些麻烦，知道什么时候发，什么时候不发。在将来呢，根据我们大家或者是有旅行计划呀，或者是太忙了，有时候会在有1-2周可能没有发，希望大家也能够谅解。而且呢，我们希望不会给大家造成困扰。将来我们做了博客或者出了网页以后，我们会把所有的视频啊，还有很多的那个教学资料啊，就一些个教学资料啊放上去，希望能够方便大家的学习。
All right. Well, now let's go to our case study. And we're going to look at the whole history of this particular stock. And again, our primary interest, our primary intention for this session is to understand the specificity of the way how big Chinese institutions are conducting their campaign. Where do they buy? Where do they sell? How do they buy? How do they sell? How can we see that from the volume and price action? And the reason why I want to stress this out, and we kind of started talking about this in the last session, is because of the 10% rule of how the price is limited to the move, to move in this 10% way. That's number one. So that dictates the institutional behavior. And that's going to be our concentration today.
今天呢，我们用600585这只股票，也就是海螺水泥来给讲这个例证，让大家跟大家探讨如何从量价关系上发现 大金融机构它的操作的痕迹。最主要呢，我们要看它在哪里吸筹，如何吸筹的，然后它在哪里派发，如何派发的，然后吸筹以后和派发以后它的价格的变化。最主要这个价格变化呢，因为它这个特点啊，中国的股票有很多特点，最主要是和其他国家或国际上的股票的特点不一样，就是我们有个涨停板、跌停板，就是10%的这个 limitation 这个限制。所以说我们看看这个限制在股票上的表现是什么样。
All right. So we're going to look at the elements of the accumulation and the distribution. Let's start with very simplistic rules on the accumulation as to what we need to see and how do we recognize institutional signature behind the price and volume action.
最主要呢，我们首先来看一下吸筹，然后我们要看吸筹在量价上的表现是什么。
The first simplistic rule, and actually Wyckoff had it as a law, is the rule of the supply and demand. What we'd like to see on the rallies is the expansion of the demand signature, and we want to see the result also to expand in the direction of the uptrend.
威科夫它有几个法则，3个大法则。第一个呢，就是说供需关系。然后我们从这里面呢来看，第一个就是说，我们看到第一个罗蒙老师画的这个箭头，这块就是说需求增加了，然后它的结果呢是价格在上涨。
Subsequently, we want to understand that the reactions are going to have no active institutional signature. This is where supply that is being provided by institutions, and by the way, the reason why we talk about institutional presence is because they are the ones that are creating big trends. They are the ones that are pushing the price, to the upside, to the downside. So we want to see either their presence in the increase of the demand in the uptrend, and then subsequent decrease of the supply and the reactions.
我们在通过这个量价关系，最主要是研究大机构的表现，因为我们知道这个价格的走势，好多的时候都是，或者最主要来说，都是由机构操纵来造成的。那么我们需要看到的是，当需求增加的时候，股市是涨的，它有这个大机构介入的表现。然后我们要再看什么呢？就是价格在回调的时候 ，react 调整的时候，这个时候呢，它没有机构的踪迹，也就是机构在没有在积极的卖出。
Another interesting idea in identification of institutional presence is just looking at the overall volume signature. And whenever the volume signature is actually increasing and is consistent, like the areas that I'm highlighting right now, that suggests that institutions are present there. And then we need to understand, are they buyers or are they sellers?
从量上面有一个非常简单的办法来发现机构的踪迹，就是如果量持续的变化的话，这个时候机构就在那里进行操作。
We see that from all of the rallies and then subsequent reactions, we have some kind of progression to the upside where we are creating higher highs and higher lows, and where the supply signature goes down on all of the reactions. So this is a bullish behavior. This is where institutions are still getting into the position, and they are unwilling to sell whatever supply of stock they have acquired, and that produces a very narrow spread type of the reactions where only weak hands are capitulating and selling their positions.
我们从价格的关系上，然后看到这里面有几个，然后这个价格呢正在每次都出现高点比前一点的高点高，而且呢它的每一次回调的时候，它的幅度都没那么大。然后我们看在这个量上来做，每一次都是在它价格上升的时候量增，价格回调的时候量减，上升价高，量增，然后回调的时候。量减，这个时候就是属于什么？机构买入，但机构没有大量卖出的时候， 这个时候预示着股价将继续上涨。
So for the accumulation, we are looking for the following pattern. We're looking for a general volume increase, and specifically we're looking for the demand increase on the rally that is being followed by a decrease of the supply on a reaction.
对于吸筹来说，我们需要发现以下几点。第一点，我们需要看成交量。那么我们需要看在股价价格上涨的时候，成交量或者是需求是上升的，股价上涨，成交量上升，代表需求上升。在股价回调的时候，成交量是减低的，逐渐减低的，代表着供应减少。
So all of this, and I'm going to go through this one more time. We want to see that the volume is being present. We want to see that the volume signature is increasing. We want to see that the volume signature is consistent in the direction of that uptrend. In a lot of cases, accumulation in Chinese markets actually happens on the way up. And that would mean that if we are having this accumulation on the way up, we could say that institutions are not only present, but they are acquiring the shares, and they are not distributing the shares until a specific point of time.
然后呢，我们最主要是在这个价格变化的时候，我们要求发现，这个价格成交量是存在，也就是成交量增大，而且呢，成交量的变化是持续的。不是说一次，成交量的变化是持续的。所以说，在中国股市的时候，很多时候我们发现吸筹是在什么？吸筹是在价格慢慢上涨的时候，机构在大量的吸筹，也就是这个时候，它机构存在，并且机构吸筹，并且保有这些个筹码，直到机构认为价格已经高到它到达他们的目标，然后再卖出。
All right. So now that we've talked about the accumulation, now let's talk about the distribution in this case study. So I want you to look into this area right here, because this is a distribution top. And we want to define where exactly institutions distributed the stock so that we would understand how to identify it in the future.
我们在谈派发，然后罗蒙老师画了一个框，这是一个派发的高点。然后呢，他希望大家在这个框里面看到价格是如何运动的，而且呢，看到成交量在哪儿发生变化。
Our first thought, an idea about where institutions could be distributing the stock should be that the stock could be distributed in the trading formation by itself. But unfortunately, when we look into the volume signature of this formation, we are seeing that institutions are somewhat inactive in this area because the volume signature is so low.
我们看这个派发这个区间的时候，很多时候我们想到可能派发是在这个派发区间发生的，对不对？这是个上升的派发区间。但是当我们看成交量的时候，我们却发现机构在这里并不活跃。
So therefore, as we are trying to identify distribution happens in the trading range, we don't see that. How about on the move to the downside? Do we have that volume signature that would tell us that there is a heavy institutional distribution on the way down? And maybe there is some, maybe just a little bit, but overall, institutions are probably already, either they are not selling for whatever reason and they're holding on to the stock, or they just not selling at all, and distribution has happened prior to that.
那我们看在这个交易区间的顶部，既然成交量这么低，机构并不积极的话，那我们看一看这个机构是不是在这个股价 大幅下跌、迅速下跌的时候，他们卖出的呢？我们一看成交量也很低，只有1、2个是一个小的这个下跌的时候成交量比较高的这个柱。那么这个时候我们就看，它既不在上面顶部的这个区间内派发的，也不在这儿派发的，那么就说明2种情况，要么就是大机构已经派发完毕了，要么就是他们根本就没有派发，还在持筹。
So if we don't have a very substantial distribution during the trading range, if we don't have a substantial distribution on the way down, it should have happened either prior to that or further down in the downtrend. And as we look into the rally, this is where we see that substantial increase in effort that suggests that not only demand is present, and probably demand is present by weak hands at this point, because they are all excited about the price moving up, but also some supply is present, and this supply is of institutional quality. And if this supply is of institutional quality, that suggests a possible distribution that could lead to 2 types of events, either a trading range by itself or a prices going down.
那么我们看，那么既在这个交易区间顶部的交易区间成交量很低，又在快速下跌的这个下跌通道里边交易量也不特别高。那么看，那么这个派发发生在什么时候呢？我们首先看一个这个迅速上涨的这一块，迅速上涨一块，它的成交量是逐渐的然后上涨，而且到这上出现了一个极大的这个成交量柱。那么就发现2种情况。那么这块是什么？努力增加了。努力增加有代表了2种情况。第一是需求增加了，这个需求增加恐怕不是机构造成的需求增加，而是一些个比较弱手，也就是说散户的需求增加了，散户感到特别兴奋，哎，这个时候他大量的买入，他在这个成交量非常增加的时候，那么大家也就说明有人卖出。那么谁在卖出呢？提供了这个供应呢？就是说机构在卖出。这个时候机构大量卖出的时候，而且是一种它就造成2种情况，要么就是出现了一个交易区间 trading range， 要么就会造成股价下跌。
Well, if we're talking about the distribution and it happens on the rally, then we would refer to that as the institutional distribution on the way up. Please notice that I'm identifying 3 types of distribution. Distribution that could happen on the way up, institutions are selling into the strength of the weak hands. Institutions during the trading range, this is where they are selling on average around specific price, and then distribution on the way down. The distribution on the way up, and I was thinking, why is this happening in the Chinese markets more commonly than in the US markets? Because the behavior is slightly different. And I think that we should be aware of that. We should be really paying attention to this. And I think it's all about this 10% rule that we've talked about in the last video, where institutions could, with their big size, could be so locked up in a position that when the downtrend is in place, they will be losing a lot of money if they are selling on the way down. So their preference in a lot of cases that I see with Chinese stocks is to distribute on the way up when weak hands are excited, and they could take the shares from institutions from strong hands into the weak hands.
那么我们大家说派发基本上在3种情况下，不是3种途径里派发。第一种呢是在股价上升急剧上升的时候，第2种呢是在顶部的交易区间派发，第3种呢是在股价下跌的时候派发。那么在我们看到中国股票有一个很大的特点，就是很多时候它在急剧上升的时候派发，这个时候派发呢是散户热情，有做高的热情，然后机构把这个开始的时候把这个股票挑起来，然后散户非常兴奋，然后大量买入，然后机构在这个股价急剧上升的时候迅速派发掉。那么为什么是在这个上升时候派发呢？原因就是中国有一个咱们国内的股市有一个涨停板跌停板， 也就是它10%一有派发到价跌10%的时候，或者是对 ST 股票下跌5%的时候就停板了，这个时候就会造成股民的恐慌，而机构呢量又比较大，它的手持筹码又比较多，如果万一造成恐慌跌停了，那么这个时候它就会派发不出去，散户不买了，这个时候筹码就会锁在他的手里，他就会输钱。所以说这个时候机构的最好的派发办法就是说，在急剧上升的时候，散户热情做多热情比较高的时候，它派发出去。
So our goal is to understand where institutions are active. So for instance, here, institutions are actively buying this area, this area, this area, this area right here. And then something happens here, and we know that that was already of the distributional quality. Then look at what happens afterwards. There is a period of institutional inactivity. Why does this happen? Well, because they are done. They have been accumulating on the way up. Then they distributed the stock on the way up as well. And then after that, they are out of the market of this specific stock. And maybe some smaller, weak institutions are producing, some kind of buys or sells, and we could try to figure this out. But in general terms, the volume signature, the low volume signature suggests that they are basically not in this position at all. And the deterioration of the price happens on their non-presence. If they are not present, they are not supporting the stock. That's number one. And if they are not present, they are basically, it suggests that whatever supply they had is already in weak hands, and weak hands cannot hold supply long term.
大家通过这个量价上可以看到机构的踪迹，比方说在这个堆量、这个堆量、这个堆量、这个堆量、这个堆量的时候，机构其实在吸筹买入，然后到了这一点的时候，这个堆量，机构是在派发。大家看派发完以后，这个价格的走势是什么？很缓的一个走势，然后就开始下跌。然后在这个下跌过程中，大家看到这个成交量非常低，大机构基本上来说已经卖完以后不在场了。这个有可能一些小的机构，或者是一些个散户，基本上在这里面买卖。
Now, look at what happens next. In the next trading range formation, where we already had a huge change of character, where the trend has been defined with the lower lows and lower highs. So we have a bias which is to the downside. We have a testing action of a potential spring, and a really quick move to the upside into the resistance area where we're failing on the upthrust. And that all is associated with some kind of increase in the volume signature. So that suggests the increase of the demand. But yet, inability of the price to go up suggests that the result is actually less of what we were expecting, even though there is a really good spread, gap, increase of the volume signature, effort is increasing significantly, and yet result is only just a temporary commitment above, and then the price comes back into the range.
然后大家看这一段的交易区间，这段交易区间是在什么情况下呢？是在机构派发完以后，股价大幅下跌的情况下发生的。那么这个股价大幅下跌，就是罗蒙老师画的这个叫做特性改变。特性改变完以后，现在已经开始是底比底低，底比底低，顶比顶低这个情况下了，已经是说基本上来说是趋势已经改变了，现在是下降趋势。下降趋势它做了这个交易区间完以后呢，大家就看，哎，这会儿产生了一个稍稍的测试回调，然后这里面有一个跌破完以后呢，这里可能是要么就是弹簧效应，要么就是 就是这个弱势表现。那么它这个弹簧效应以后，看似弹簧效应以后呢，到这块有一个测试，这个测试的时候是成交量非常低，也就是说没有卖的人很少。说这个时候测试成功，然后呢，股价就开始回涨一段，出现了几个表现。第一个，你看这里出现一个非常大的上升柱，而且这上居然出现了一个跳空上涨，所以说很多的时候大家就说啊，强势又来了。然后在这个时候呢，成交量增加，在这一点的时候成交量增加，就是说努力增加了，结果呢，结果其实并没有造成价格的持续性上涨，结果下降了，也就是说结果这个努力增加，结果缩小，这是什么？这是做的一个上冲回落。
So as we go further to the downside, we see that there is an increase in the supply signature. And there is a very, very quick capitulation. So that suggests a couple of things. The first one is that maybe there were some kind of institutions that were trying to see some kind of value. And usually all of them are going to be weak hands. They're going to see the value, institutions that see value, short-term value, and they're going to be buyers. So they are pushing the price up. And then there is no support around the new area of the resistance, and the price falls back. So what they're trying to do is just to quickly get out of the of this position and quickly get rid of it, because they know if they're going to be caught up in this downtrend, it's going to be really difficult for them to get out, and to get out profitably. And secondly, public could be excited on the way up, and they're going to start buying, and as the price goes down, they're going to quickly capitulate, because they have the memory of what has happened before, on the way up and then on the way down.
然后大家看这段快速下跌，呢是怎么造成的呢？有可能在这段上涨的时候，也是一个比较小的或者弱的机构，他看到哎这块股价跌得很厉害，这可能是超跌了。那么超跌的情况，而且尤其是在这块又做了一个测试，成功测试，那么他们怎么办？他们想把这个股价给买起来，但买起来完以后到这块，刚才我们说了是努力增加了，但结果减少了，这个时候怎么办？他们就迅速开始卖出股票，所以说就造成了这两个，这是一个非常大的成交量比较高的下跌 K 线，而在与此同时呢，这里还有散户的操作，散户呢有可能在看到这块这个做多热情比较高的时候，他们大量的买入完以后，一看到这个非常大的 K 线下跌，这个时候他们怎么办？他们就记忆起来，哇，前一段时间也有一个股价迅速上升，然后股价迅速下跌，这个时候散户怎么办？他们也惊慌，也大量卖出。这几次卖出的时候，就会造成了这两条 K 线的量非常大。
So in a way, this area right here, where we have a lot of excitement that the price might go up, and then fear, and therefore capitulation, is repeating itself on this chart over and over in the areas of the distribution. We see the excitement on the way up by weak hands on the rally, and this is where distribution is happening. And then we see a fear by weak hands here. We see this also in the next segment, here and here. And look at the volume signature. Right, so initial increase in the effort. And then what happens with the supply signature? Supply increases, suggesting that there is some selling. Supply increases, some selling. And then here we could just identify just a little bit that the selling has increased relative to the previous areas as well.
我们看到从这一点来说，这儿有一个散户的做多热情。从这一点我们也看到，哎，散户也有做多热情。 到这儿我们看到是大家的这种恐慌抛卖、恐慌抛盘，这里也有个恐慌抛盘。然后呢，看到这儿成交量，这成交量非常大，但是呢，股价却涨不上去。到这儿的时候，我们看到有一个卖出，也就是这里是做多热情完以后，也是股价不能上涨，然后这儿有个恐慌卖出，这两条线。然后这儿呢又有一个是做多热情增加，又大家认为哎，现在已经是这个股价超跌了，超跌完以后怎么办？股价会有一波上涨，然后在这儿有一个散户的做多热情，然后又是股价不能上涨，持续上涨，然后到这儿又是恐慌拍卖，看这个成交量比较增高，这也是拍卖。在这点的时候，在这次下跌的时候，其实我们看到的成交量并不是特别大，只有几根小 K 线。哎，成交量就上涨的，所以我们从这里可以看到，大机构在这儿派发完以后，在这些都是比较小的机构，来操作了，或者是散户在操作。
And look at the duration, and this is also a very important point right here. In the first case, because we were in the uptrend environment, the sentiment was very bullish. As we go into the first distribution pattern. So therefore, duration for the distribution has increased qualities here. Duration of the same pattern where we go from excitement to fear in the second case is already smaller. Why is that? Well, because the sentiment has been changed from heavily bullish to mixed. Some people are thinking that this could be a short-term opportunity for the price to advance from this area. Some people are thinking that, no, it's not. We are in the downtrend, so therefore I'm going to sell. I'm going to sell on the way up, and then I might sell even on the way down. So therefore, duration contracts for this type of behavior, which is basically the same behavioral pattern. And look at the next point where we are doing the same thing. Duration goes down even more. Why? Well, because the sentiment in the downtrend that has been established for so long, and people already know, yes, we're in the downtrend, so sentiment becomes very bearish here. So in the bearish sentiment, this type of activity is going to be quick because people are not going to trust the rallies, and people are going to try to sell really quickly on all of the failures.
大家再看一看这里面的这个交易区间的持续时间，这段持续时间比较长，相对来说这段持续时间比较长。它原因是什么呢？原因是一开始股价一直处于上升阶段，所以说大家的这个氛围这股市氛围一直是牛市的氛围。所以说，即使是大的机构庄家在这儿把筹码抛出去以后，其实你看成交量最高是在这儿。这会儿是抛筹码的最集中阶段，抛去筹码以后，其实是股市还持续在高点一段时间，然后才出现了这种恐慌下跌。然后看这次的上涨，这次的上涨的时候呢，其实股市已经跌了一大块了，很多人就比较警觉了。股市上涨一块以后，这个氛围已经没有就是什么叫牛熊交加，它用一个 mix 的。牛熊交加这个感觉，然后呢，只是一看不对，股价不能再继续上涨，大家迅速开始恐慌抛盘，然后到第三次的时候，很多人都已经意识到了这是熊市，因为股价已经下跌了这么长时间了，超跌会造成一定的反弹，所以说在反弹的时候，很多人买入，但买入完以后一看，那个股价不能继续上涨，迅速抛盘，所以说这个时候持续时间会越来越短。
We could look into the last pattern right here that also has an increase in the effort and has this attempt to rally. And then we are capitulating to the downside. But there is a big significant difference between this pattern and what we've seen before. On the move to the downside, even though the price is actually committing to the downside, we see that supply relative to the increase on the rally, of the volume on the rally, is actually decreasing. Every time before that, we had either the same type of the signature. Well, here it's different, but this is a different type of pattern. You know, this is more of the top distribution. And in this top distribution, we're still under very, very bullish sentiment. So formation is slightly different. But from the prior to here, and then going into the last pattern, we're seeing a change of behavior that suggests at least a temporary stop in action, or maybe a reversal in an attempt to go up.
我们再看最后的这一段时间啊，这一段时间的量价关系和其他的都不太一样。我们看到什么呢？这段时间有一个上涨，也就是说大家看到又超跌了，反弹，这段上涨，然后再下跌，上涨失败以后再下跌的这段成交量，你通过这个上涨的成交量买入量和最后卖出量，它是下降的。而在以前呢，要么是平行的，就是要么是稍稍有上涨，而这段时间呢不一样，这段时间是在第一次出现，出现这个停顿的现象，和这两次呢的感觉，散户的感觉和市场氛围不太一样，也就这个时候它的卖出量已经没那么高了，正好发现没有，这是卖出的量已经没有那么高的时候，这就说明有可能散户的筹码已经快没有了。有可能这个下跌的趋势要停顿了。
All right, so let's look at into what happens next. And I'm going to start here. All right, well, we definitely see, and maybe just take a little bit more. Yeah, this is good. So look into this last pattern, this rally and this reaction, and actually the whole pattern right here. What could you say about this volume signature relative to the previous area where it increased? So we see that overall volume is increasing. Why? Why would it increase as the price goes down? Well, maybe it suggests that institutions are already present in this market. So what do they do then? What is their bias? What is the institutional bias? Well, they are probably accumulating on the way down. And this is where weak hands are selling, still selling, and then strong hands are buying. And that's our period of the accumulation by institutions.
大家注意到，这是刚才我们讲的那一点啊，然后比较一下这里的成交量，一个堆量，比前一段的堆量有什么区别呢？这块的堆量可能比前一段堆量稍微高一点。为什么呢？那么机构在这里的表现是什么？有可能机构是在股价下跌的时候，这是股价下跌，跌得很低了，量反倒增加了，所以说有可能机构在股价下跌的时候，它在吸筹。而根据股价下跌的时候，散户因为他比较惊慌，他是在卖出。
As we've identified that possibly we have institutional presence here, we want a confirmation that indeed the behavior of the price and volume is bullish. So therefore, we are looking for behavior in price that would advance and show us higher highs, higher lows. Price needs to do that in the uptrend. And then the volume signature specifically is going to be increase of the demand with the subsequent decrease of the supply, increase of the demand on the rallies, like we see here, 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 and then decrease of the supply signature. And we see it everywhere as the price tries to go up.
我们看到这个堆量，而且跟以前的这段量比较，而且根据这一段这个量价关系的比较，我们说有可能机构在这里出现了，它比较活跃，而且有可能我们根据这个关系来看，机构有可能在吸筹。那么这是一种猜测。猜测完以后呢，我们需要一个确认。这个确认是什么？是接下来的量价表现。我们需要接下来的量价有什么表现呢？价格，我们如果是机构在吸筹的话，我们希望能看到价格是上涨，也就是说顶比顶高，底比底高。而且呢，我们希望能看到在股价上涨的时候，它的成交量是增加的；股价在调整的时候，在横盘调整的时候，或者是下降调整的时候，成交量是降低的。那么我们看没看到这种现象呢？我们接下来看，这块股价上涨，成交量增加；停盘调整，不是停盘调整，也就是这个股价调整的时候，成交量减低，在逐渐减低；股价上升，成交量上升；股价调整，成交量减低。我们在整个这个区间内都会看到这种现象。
So our goal or intentions with analysis and trading tactics here is always going to be look for institutional presence, then identify bullish behavior, and then think about the trading tactics. Well, what do we do here? We see that institutions are in this position. We are seeing the bullish behavior from the price and volume action. So therefore, most likely institutional bias is to the upside. How do we trade it?
我们的目标是什么呢？我们目标是首先要发现机构的操作、机构的踪迹，然后呢，我们要看到什么？看到特性改变，哪里市场的这个情绪或机构市场价格的这个怎么发生了变化。第三呢，我们要看一下我们这时候交易策略和我们交易技巧是什么。
Well, we definitely want to understand the Wyckoff story behind it. So we definitely would be looking into a trading range where we could potentially identify specific phases and how they unfold. And then we would be looking for the specific areas of the accumulation, and based on the Wyckoff structure, we would be thinking of coming into the position at the points where after the reaction, the volume signature increases, suggesting that institutions are buying at this point. And we want to come in and establish it in phases C, D, and early E. So somewhere here, then maybe on the next increase right here. So these are going to be our points of entry. And any type of increase in the volume signature out of the formation where we might have favorable points of entry. And that would be our trading tactic.
然后我们从这里面看到，市场已经即将变化，而且呢，当时我们说看到了这个现象以后，我们需要一个确认，这个确认就是市场增加的时候，股价增加的时候，成交量增加；股价下调的时候，成交量也下调。这个时候呢，我们看到了这种现象，也看到了确认，所以说我们就在这里画了一个魏科夫的交易区间，来分析它的魏科夫的这个阶段和它的事件。画了这个区间以后呢，我们看，这里我们可以把它确定为阶段 A， 这里阶段 B， 这里呢出现了一个 higher low 的时候，就是说底比前底高的时候，我们确定为这段是 higher 是阶段C， 然后呢我们看到这里有可能是已经爆发突破了，是 sign of strength， 也就是说这是强势出现，然后强势出现以后一个回踩回调，然后呢这个时候我们说，有可能这里是我们的介入点。为什么这里是介入点？这里面出现了2次底比前底高，然后这里呢突破回调又比前底高，这时候这是我们的介入点。 从此以后，我们知道，既然是股市已经突破，而且每次都出现了一个顶比顶高，底比底高，那么这个时候每一次的，要么是上涨的时候，要么是在这个回调的底部，这都是我们的买入点。这大概就是我们的交易技巧。
So later on, let's say if we missed all of these points of entry, we would identify some kind of areas of the reaccumulation, and the tactics are going to be the same. We want to find a potential phase C. We want to find the bar that has this kind of like institutional presence in the increase in the volume signature, and that would be the point of entry for us for the next move to the upside.
如果在这里面的介入点大家都没有介入的话，那么到这儿来，这是一个再吸筹区间。再吸筹区间，大家也是通过威科夫的方法，我们画出来，把这个阶段找出来。而我们的介入点呢，基本上也是在阶段 C、阶段 D 的初期、阶段 C 的后期、阶段D 的初期来介入。这里我们看到，调整完以后，这里的成交量开始增加，这是介入点、买入点。
So now let's look at the latest rally that we have, because we've talked about the pattern, which is the distribution on the way up. And usually we would have some kind of rally that would have the increase in effort that would suggest the increase of the supply and would suggest a distribution. We would have then the reaction and maybe the next rally where the effort would increase even more or supply would increase even more. And that would also produce some kind of inability of the rally to make a significant high, and then it's going to fail. So that's a distribution on the way up. We should be asking ourselves a question. Is there a distribution on the way up in this rally? So we would be looking at the volume signature. It definitely increased relative to the previous moves to the upside. But if we would be looking into this area right here, and we would be comparing the volume signatures, we probably would say that there is not a lot of selling that is happening on the way up. And therefore, on the way up, and therefore we're probably thinking that this change of character that starts to appear is suggesting a trading range, but not a distribution.
我们刚才看了这里的吸筹区间，然后我们再看股价上涨了一段时间有没有派发。我们前一段时间呢，前一段讲了这个中国股市我们股市的在上涨过程中的派发。上涨过程中派发呢有几个特点。第一个呢，比方说在这一段成交量增加了，我们说努力增加了。努力增加它有包括两种内容啊，一个是它的供应也增加了，也就是有可能是在派发。然后呢，到第二段这段时间以后过了下调一下，然后在第二段以后呢，它是成交量增加的更多，也就是说努力增加更多，这时候的供应也大，但是它的结果却没有前一段时间的上涨幅度高，也就是也许刚刚突破前一点点，然后就开始下跌了。这个时候我们说，这里面所有的努力基本上来说都是掩盖了派发和掩盖了供应，这里面都是成交量比较增大，这个时候我们叫做上涨过程中的派发。那么看这段是不是这种情况呢？我们看一看成交量，这段确实是有一段非常大的上涨，上涨完以后呢，立刻就开始有一段下跌。我们看，那么这一段我们问问它是不是在派发？我们看一看成交量，这段成交量它是不是比以前显著的多呢？这段成交量看似比这儿的成交量高，但是跟这儿的相比，它并没有显著的增加，反倒这段可能会少一点。那么我们说这一段有可能它并没有大量的派发，尤其是在看这段下降柱的时候，它的成交量也比较低。
Also, look at the whole distance that the rally has covered and how the change of character is so small in comparison on the retracement in comparison to this whole rally. So also suggest a reaccumulation.
那么再看呢，这里边虽是一个特性改变啊，这也就上涨过程中的特性改变，但我们看这一段它的距离跟整个这个距离来相比的话，并没有那么大那么多，所以说这里面的我们可能判断这里面是出现了一个交易区间，而不是说趋势改变，而不是说对下降，就是整个的趋势改变。
And we kind of see that this change of character is actually associated with some of the supply that's coming in, but it doesn't produce a lot of result to the downside. So what does it mean? Well, maybe there is some institutional profit taken, but they still keep the majority of their position. Then throughout this whole structure, we see how the volume signature goes down, and specifically supply is not being presented as the price starts to make higher highs, higher lows. So that still suggests a bias to the upside.
大家看到这虽然特性改变，但它的下跌的幅度并没有特别大，相比和整个上升的这段幅度相比来说，它下跌的幅度并不是非常大，而且它成交量有一定的增加，在这块跟前一段时间比，这段比有一定的增加，但并不是特别高。所以说有些人是获利回吐，但是量不是很大，也就是大的机构有可能还在吃筹。那么我们继续往下看，那随着价格的发展，虽然是没有突破前高，但这里面呢，卖出量也相对减少，而且到这儿了，而且出现了底比底高的情况，这说明什么？说明在吸收。再往下走的话，一直是底比底高，而且呢，成交量或者是卖出量几乎是看不见了。
All right. So what does this suggest? If we're thinking that the bias is still to the upside, if we're thinking that this is a period of a reaccumulation, that gives us a couple of deductions here. The first one is that institutions were buyers on the way up. Here, 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 and even the latest rally was just basically a buy from institutions, as well as some of the rallies in the formation. Secondly, as we see from the supply signature, they are not sellers in this reaccumulation, which leads us to the next conclusion, that is that we are going to have a continuation of the uptrend after this formation is resolved.
那么，如果我们说这个方向现在有可能，趋势还是在上涨，而且呢，这一个是再吸筹的区间的话，那我们需要看到什么？看到是机构现在一直是在买和持筹。机构买在哪？机构买在这几个堆量，这里是一直在上涨的过程中，机构在买，甚至在这个上涨的过程中，很多迟到的机构、小机构、弱的机构开始买了，已经看到，哎，趋势已经确实是在上涨了，他们在这儿买入，他们在这儿的时候都不是大量的卖出，而是在持筹。大概有可能我们猜测，卖出的人、获利回吐的人，有可能是散户和这比较短期的操作者。
All right, so for today, we're going to stop here. And this is going to be our part one of the case study on the Sea Snail Concrete Company. I think it's a really good case study. I want you to really grasp the concept of institutional presence and how we define that. And I want you to start building those, Wyckoff stories about how institutions are behaving, because Chinese market is so unique, it's so specific. Behavior of institutions are going to be defined, in a different way or slightly different way than in the US. So therefore, we want to understand it and we want to use it in our analysis.
今天呢就讲到这里，希望大家多练习，多在股票的这个图谱上发现，用威科夫的方法发现量价关系和这个股市上涨的踪迹，和机构最主要是发现机构操作的踪迹。因为 中国的股市呢，咱们国股市是非常有特点，它和很多国外的股市或者是和其他的市场都不太一样，希望大家多学习多练习。
And as usual, I just want to thank everybody for joining us for this session. We'll see you in the video next week. And thank you, a big thank you for Joe Gobin for translating this session. Thank you guys and bye bye.
非常感谢，大家跟我们在一起，非常感谢大家观看视频，然后呢，我们希望大家下次再见。